He was gone. 6 years ago, she swore she buried him. She swore she watched him die. Not once, but 6 times. And yet, last night he knocked on her door. Same voice, same tattoo, same eyes. And now I have to figure out, what did Miranda Vale really bury in the desert outside Phoenix? Because what the cops just found out there isn't human. The night started like any other. Quiet, heavy desert air. Streetlights buzzing over cracked pavement. Nothing special. Until the 911 call came in. A woman, hysterical, screaming for help. She said someone had broken into her apartment on West Bell Road in North Phoenix. She was alone. She was hurt. And she said the intruder was still inside or had just left. When the first officer arrived, she was already outside, barefoot, bleeding from the mouth, wearing only a torn nightgown. She looked terrified, not just scared, hunted. Her name was Miranda Vale, and when they asked her who broke in, she whispered something the body cam caught perfectly. My ex, Jamie Coulter, I killed him 6 years ago. Jamie Coulter. The name rang a bell, and it should have. Back in the summer of 2000, Jamie's name was all over local news. 29 years old, musician, loud, aggressive, and frequently arrested for disturbing the peace. But more than that, everyone knew him for one thing: being Miranda's boyfriend, or tormentor, really. Neighbors reported the screaming constantly. Holes punched through drywall, shattered windows. One woman even claimed she saw Miranda one night dragging a trash bag down the hallway, dripping a red trail. But when Jamie vanished that August, there was no body, just a missing person flyer and a mountain of rumors. Miranda was arrested, questioned, but with no evidence and no corpse. She walked. No charges. Case closed. Until now. Here's the part that makes your skin crawl. Because cops pulled the surveillance footage from Miranda's apartment building the night she called 911. And at exactly 2:13 am, there he was. A man barefoot walking calmly up the stairs toward her apartment door. Same lean frame, same messy black hair, same vintage band t-shirt he was last seen wearing the night he disappeared in 2000. He looked straight at the camera, smiled, and vanished behind the door. The footage ends there. And that's when the theory started forming in my head, something I didn't want to say out loud yet, something impossible. But then it got worse, because 24 hours later, detectives unearthed a shallow grave off the I-17 highway. And in it, a man, same face, identical wounds, and there were 5 more just like him. When I first heard about the bodies, I didn't believe it. I thought it was media spin, a viral hoax, something exaggerated. But no, the detectives confirmed it. 6 graves, all shallow, all in a tight radius, buried under scattered mesquite and desert brush about 20 miles north of Phoenix. All of them were male. All of them shared the same build, same bone structure, and according to the preliminary facial reconstructions, the same face, Jamie Coulter's. Each body had identical stab wounds, deep, precise, right through the sternum, like whoever did it knew exactly where to aim. That wasn't even the strangest part. Some of the remains had been in the ground for years, others, weeks, maybe days. So I had to ask myself, was Miranda Vale killing the same man over and over? Or was something way darker happening out there in the desert? After her arrest, Miranda went almost completely silent. No visitors, no bail, just a public defender and a padded room. She wasn't screaming anymore. She wasn't hysterical like the night of the break-in. She was calm, too calm. But when she finally did speak, Her story shifted. She said she didn't kill Jamie in 2000 like everyone thought. Not really. She tried. She said she stabbed him in the chest during one of his violent outbursts. He collapsed. She panicked, dragged him out in the middle of the night, thought he was dead, buried him. But then, and these are her exact words, he came back. And every time I tried to end it again, he kept coming back. Always the same, always smiling. The court psychiatrist chalked it up to PTSD mixed with trauma-induced psychosis. But I wasn't so sure. Because remember, the surveillance video? That man was real. A camera doesn't hallucinate. And one more thing. The blood on Miranda's hands the night of the break-in. It wasn't hers. And it wasn't human. I started digging through Jamie Coulter's old file, looking for anything at all that might explain what was happening. I didn't expect to find much, but something caught my eye. Back in 1999, Jamie went missing for 6 days. Police chalked it up to a drug bender meth, maybe shrooms, but when he showed back up, he wouldn't talk about where he'd been. Just said he had seen death with his own eyes, and she spoke in a voice like fire. His words, not mine. After that, something changed in him. He got violent, possessive, obsessive with Miranda, started carving symbols into their apartment walls, started burning things in the fireplace, small things like teeth. Nobody really reported it. Back then, it just sounded like a guy spiraling out. But now, those carvings, they weren't random. I found one of them etched into a tree trunk out in the desert just a few feet from the newest grave. Same mark, same pattern, burned deep into the wood like it had been branded there. So what the hell happened to Jamie Coulter in those 6 missing days? And what exactly did Miranda bring back with her from that first grave? There's something you need to understand about Miranda Vale. Before Jamie vanished in 2000, she was quiet, reserved, barely spoke to her neighbors, worked at a bookstore, kept to herself. But after his disappearance, she started talking to someone no one else could see. One of her old co-workers told detectives something strange. Miranda would whisper when she thought no one was listening, sometimes in English, sometimes in what sounded like Latin. She started drawing symbols in the margins of receipts, napkins, even inside returned books. One of those drawings, I found it in the evidence file. It's the same as the one burned into the tree near the grave. The co-worker said she once asked Miranda, "Who are you talking to?" And Miranda looked her dead in the eyes and said, "He visits me at night, but it's not Jamie anymore." I drove out to the burial site myself. I wanted to see it, feel it, smell the air. The police had already sealed it off, but I talked my way past the tape, said I was press. No one checked. It's miles off any main road, dry, hot, silent, except for the wind scraping across the sand. No animals, no birds, no bugs. That was the first thing I noticed. No sound, just dead stillness. I walked to the center where the freshest grave had been dug up, and I swear to you, I felt something shift under my boots, like the ground wasn't solid, like something was moving beneath me. And then I saw it, a blackened piece of cloth poking through the dirt. When I brushed it off, it was part of a band t-shirt. The same kind Jamie wore, the same kind he wore in the surveillance video. But it wasn't torn. It was burned, singed around the edges, like it had been in a fire that never touched the soil around it. Back in Phoenix, I started researching the symbol Miranda kept drawing, the one on napkins, trees, and eventually her own skin. She'd carved it into her arm in jail. It took days, endless forums, occult books, forgotten languages. And then finally I found a match. An ancient sigil. Not of the devil. Not of anything you'd see in a movie. It was older. A pre-Christian desert deity. Whispers of it still exist in old indigenous texts, Spanish missionary records, and fringe anthropology books. Its name, a Saltamek. The name translates roughly to the one who walks again. A figure that doesn't die not because he's immortal, but because he's repeated. A pattern, a face, a memory that infects the minds of the living and regenerates through belief, through trauma, through ritual. And here's the kicker. One of the only known rituals to summon it is to bury the same body 6 times in the same soil. And each time, it comes back less human. Back at the Phoenix Police Evidence Locker, there's one item that never made it into court. It wasn't logged as part of Miranda's first arrest, and it wasn't mentioned again in the reopened file. But it exists. A red leather-bound notebook found behind a false panel in Miranda's bedroom's wall during her 2000 investigation. I managed to get my hands on a scanned copy unofficially. Inside, rambling journal entries, not dated, not neat, just chaos. Some entries are just repeated names, Jamie, 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 over and over again. But others, they're confessions, fragments of memories that don't add up. One page reads, "He came back after the 3rd time, but he wasn't right. He didn't blink. He didn't bleed. He remembered things I never told him." Another, "I tried to burn him. He screamed like a child. Then he laughed. Then he disappeared." And finally, "I think the desert wants him back, or maybe I was never supposed to take him out." Here is something that chilled me more than any ghost story ever could. The autopsy reports from the 6 bodies. They're nearly identical, same height, weight, eye color, scars, even dental patterns. But here's what the medical examiner didn't want to report publicly. They all had slightly different fingerprints, not just off by a smudge, structurally different, almost as if each version of Jamie Coulter was real, a clone, a copy, a shadow of the original. Some had healed injuries that others didn't. One had a broken rib. Another had healed from a deep knife wound to the thigh, something Jamie never had, according to Miranda. And when they ran DNA tests, the same result came back each time, Jamie Coulter. But the cellular aging varied. One corpse looked 35, another 20. That's impossible unless we're not dealing with copies at all, but with something that resets. Something that chooses when and how to return. There's one more thing you need to hear. Miranda agreed to one recorded interview while in custody. Just one. They brought in a profiler from Flagstaff, someone trained in trauma psychology. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Reese. The footage is scratchy, grainy, old school VHS style. Miranda sits across from Dr. Reese. Hands folded, hair matted, eyes hollow. Dr. Reese starts gently. "Miranda, can you tell me what happened that night?" Miranda's voice is barely above a whisper. She leans forward and says, "He found me again. I don't know how. I don't know what he is now, but I don't think he's done yet." Dr. Reese asks, "Done with what?" Miranda looks directly into the camera and says, "With me, with you, with everyone who sees his face." And then, for no reason at all, the tape cuts to black. The remaining 15 minutes, gone, wiped, corrupted. And what happened to Dr. Evelyn Reese? She left her job the next day. No explanation, no forwarding address, just vanished. After Miranda's arrest in 2006, one of the detectives, a guy named Hector Salazar, kept digging on his own time. He wasn't supposed to. The case was too unstable, too bizarre, but he couldn't let it go. Salazar found something buried in a county storage facility, mislabeled as a missing persons report. It was an old cassette tape. No case, just a post-it that said M bedroom drawer. He played it, and what he heard, a conversation. Miranda talking to someone, whispering like they were inches away from her. Except here's the thing. No other voice is heard, just hers. I did what you asked. I gave you the blood. Pause. No, I won't do it again. He's gone. Stay gone. Then a sound. A dragging sound like nails scraping across concrete. Then laughter. And that voice low, distorted, not human, only 2 words. Dig deeper. I started looking into Jamie Coulter's past, not just police records, but his early life, where he came from, who raised him. Turns out he was a foster child, born in El Paso, moved around a lot, never stayed long in one place. By the time he was 13, he'd been through 6 homes. There's one foster record that stood out, a small ranch in southern Arizona. Family name, the Temex. That name sounded familiar. And then it hit me. A Saltimec. The entity Miranda kept mentioning. The name wasn't random. Jamie had once lived with a family whose last name resembled that word. What are the chances? I tracked down one of the daughters from that ranch, Maria Temec, now in her 50s. She didn't want to talk at first, said Jamie was different. Said he used to wake up at night and stare out at the desert. Said he would stand for hours and whisper, "She's waiting." When I asked who she was, Maria just shook her head and said, "We don't talk about the thing that lives out there." 5 days after her arrest, Miranda Vale was found unresponsive in her cell. No signs of trauma, no poison, no external wounds. But here's what's eerie. Her eyes were wide open, frozen in fear, as if she'd seen something in the dark. The coroner couldn't declare an official cause of death, just cardiac failure under psychological distress. But here's the part no one talks about. She left behind a message, scratched into the concrete under her bed. Tiny, shallow letters made with the sharp end of a paperclip. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. He never stops. He's just learning. Each one is closer. Then a symbol. The same one from the tree, the notebook, her skin. A closed circle with 6 hash marks and 1 small space left open for a 7th. 2 weeks after Miranda's death, Detective Hector Salazar went back to the burial site alone. He didn't tell the department, didn't file a report. He just disappeared for 24 hours. When he came back, something in him had changed. He looked exhausted, hollow, like he hadn't slept, or worse, like he had seen something he couldn't unsee. He handed over a single photo to his superior and took a leave of absence the next day. That photo, it showed a new grave. Freshly dug, no shovel marks, just a perfect oval of disturbed soil in the same cursed radius as the others. And at the head of the grave, a stone, etched into it, the circle. 7 hash marks now, and the name, Miranda Vale. She had become the 7th, but the grave was empty. Some people started whispering theories. Maybe Miranda wasn't a killer, maybe she was a conduit. What if each version of Jamie wasn't a copy, but a resurrection? And each one needed a death to anchor it. One man dies, another rises, one goes into the earth, one comes out. A cycle, a trait. That would explain the strange cellular aging, the mixed injuries, the same face, same eyes, but slightly different souls. But here's where it gets even more terrifying. A new body surfaced, this time hundreds of miles away, outside a rest stop near Yuma. Same wounds, same clothes, same face. But this one was different. This version of Jamie had something in his pocket, something no other version did. A torn photo of Miranda. But this time he had carved the symbol on the back. The Yuma body was brought in for cremation. The forensic team didn't want another burial. They wanted to end the cycle, whatever it was. They prepared the body, placed it in the cremation chamber, turned the dial. Flames roared. The chamber reached over 2000 degrees. But after 30 minutes, the fire shut off and the body was still intact. No burns, no melting, just warm, like something had been asleep and now was fully awake. The body sat up on the slab. Security footage cut out for exactly 44 seconds. When it returned, the slab was empty, and on the inside wall of the cremation chamber, written in soot, "One left." A week later, the Phoenix Police Department received an anonymous tip. No voice, no trace, just a single line of text sent to an unlisted station email. "Check her mirror." They knew exactly whose her the message referred to. Miranda Vale's apartment had been sealed since her arrest and death. Nobody had touched it. No one wanted to. But now, they went back in. Everything was undisturbed, except the mirror. In the bedroom, the one that faced her bed, there was something carved into the glass. A message, but backwards. You had to look at it from the reflection just to read it. "I only needed 7. And below that, etched deep with almost surgical precision, was a face. Her face, smiling. And behind the reflection, captured faintly by one officer's body cam, I swear this is real, the figure of a man. Barefoot, band shirt, standing in the corner of the mirror, smiling. He wasn't in the room, only in the glass. The case was never closed. The department sealed it, classified as open anomaly, which is code for "We don't know what the hell this is and we're afraid to find out." Detective Hector Salazar quit the force 3 months later, moved to Alaska. No contact since. The red notebook disappeared from evidence, and the 7th grave still empty. But I can't stop thinking about something Miranda said on that tape. He's just learning. Each one is closer. What if we were never supposed to know Jamie Coulter's name? What if that was the ritual, the symbol, the repetition, the belief? What if the real resurrection is recognition? Because since this case resurfaced, 3 more break-ins have been reported. Same tattoo, same shirt, same laugh. No fingerprints, no face on security footage, just the presence. So if you hear something outside your door tonight, something barefoot on the concrete, humming a song you don't remember telling anyone, don't open it, don't answer. And for the love of God, don't say his name.